Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCullum, and today we are taking a look at a breech-loading rifle design patented by then Major Fosbery. So you may recognize Fosbery's name from British arms development. He's probably best known today for the Webley-Fosbery, the sort of semi-automatic self-cocking revolver. He also is well known in the sporting arms world for developing the Paradox, which was basically a rifled choke type of adapter for shotguns, which allowed the firing of shot or solid projectiles accurately. And he tried his hand at a single-shot cartridge rifle for the British Army. Now this was for a trial that was announced in 1866, and the trial itself, I believe, was early 1868. The trial's report came out in 1868, and the British military was looking for a new single-shot cartridge firing repeating rifle, or single shot cartridge firing rifle. And they had a couple of specific requirements. Most significantly, they wanted a gun that, in addition to all of the normal requirements of accuracy and reliability and ease of manufacture, they also specifically wanted it to be a gun that could be easily operated in tight quarters. And what they meant by that was not today's idea of close quarters combat in a small room. What they were talking about was troops on the line, shoulder to shoulder. So they didn't want a gun that would require where you'd have to tilt the gun up in a direction or bring the gun around in order to reload it. They wanted something that could be held, fired, reloaded, and fired again, all without having to move the gun substantially, so that you could do this in close order drill. And they ended up testing 9 different guns. Remington was in there, the Albini Braidlin was in there, a Henry patent gun was in there, which I don't think was the lever action Henry that we're used to, because these were all for a much larger cartridge. They were looking for something equivalent roughly to the 450, 577 Martini cartridge, and a whole selection of other guns in this trial. And Fosbery came in like number 6 in the trial, unfortunately. They had a couple concerns, but it's overall a quite interesting rifle, and we should take a closer look at exactly how it works. So Fosbery has pretty clearly marked the top of the bolt assembly here with his name and patent number. And then he also has what I believe is his family coat of arms on the back below that. Now mechanically, what we have here is an action that is going to flip vertically up over the top of the barrel. There's an external hammer, but it's sort of deceptive in that this is really just an external cocking piece, because when I cock it, you can see that there is no firing pin on the hammer, and there's no firing pin here either. What's going on here is this is actually pushing a firing pin that is inside the action. And this simply acts as an external cocking lever and cocking indicator. So an officer looking at a line of troops could be able to see the status of each man's gun by looking at this indicator. Now once the action is cocked, what we do is pull this handle backwards, and that is going to flip the breech assembly open. It will snap right up on top there, and we have a chamber here to drop the cartridge in. There is an extractor here, which is connected to the handle. So the extractor sits nice and flat under the cartridge until you pull the handle back. Then the way that this opening lever actually works is a little more complicated than you might expect. There are 2 parts here. So one of them is this shark fin looking piece, and the other is this much more substantial wedge. This wedge drops into this space, and then when you pull the handle back, it's pulling this block back, which is going to ride on this angled surface, and that's going to really kick the bolt up strongly when you pull the bolt handle back. So we have this fin pulling up. So you have pressure on the handle and that, but the initial opening comes from this. And you saw how violently that flipped open. That was actually one of the testing commission's concerns. They thought that this might be impacting the top of the barrel too strongly and might lead to damage. It appears they suggested adding a little copper pad or some other fairly malleable metal just to absorb that impact. They figured that might cause damage over time. Now there are two elements that actually lock this rifle. The first, sort of, is this little detent, which is going to pop into that little hole, and that doesn't lock the gun for the purposes of firing. What it does is just keep the breech block closed while the gun is being handled. When you actually fire it, this plunger comes through the back of the breech block here, and it's going to go into the front of the bolt. This is actually going to both hit the firing pin and lock the action shut. So there's the plunger, and it drops into that hole. So as long as the hammer, so to speak, is down, the breech block cannot be opened. That's the locking mechanism. So this made for a very smooth and easy gun to load, which is exactly what the British were looking for. You could easily pull this handle back. I don't want to let it slam. That, with a nice forceful yank on the handle, will extract and eject the case, and then you just drop a new cartridge in and push the breech block back down. I think Fosbery seems to have made a pretty good go at it. Clearly, the committee decided that the Martini was a bit better, though. Ultimately, of course, this wasn't chosen. Instead, the British ended up adopting the Martini-Henry rifle, the Martini action and the Henry barrel, the Henry rifling system, and they would go on to use that to quite good effect. But it's really cool to be able to take a look at one of the trials rifles that competed against it. So, hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, I would appreciate it if you would consider checking out my Patreon page. It is support from folks there at $1 a month that makes it possible for me to travel and find cool guns like this one and bring them to you guys. Thanks for watching.